Just about 18 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock, welcome back to the Now Morning Show. Now, with the continuous flooding due to the inclement weather and footage of people venturing into the dirty water when it rains, the Ministry of Health is joining us this morning to discuss health issues associated with flooding. Joining me is Director of Veterinary Public Health, Dr. Saeed Rahman. Dr. Rahman, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Now.
Good morning, Mr. Souza, and good morning to the listening and viewing public in Trinidad and Tobago.
Now, I want us to just jump right in, Dr. Rahman, because I know, for example, we are in the rainy season. We've been seeing the flash flooding that's happening, and people are still going into the water, no matter how many times the ministry has advised people not to go in. And so, what are some of the health-related aspects of flooding? I mean, what are some of the negative effects, as it relates to health, of course?
Sure. Well, of course, the greatest risk will be that of drowning. As you know, floodwaters, a lot of people underestimate the power of that water, and your video footage can show how deadly that can be. So we know there have been people who have been swept away, either themselves or their vehicles. And so drowning is probably the biggest risk from those who are driving or walking in floodwater. Additional to that, you can have injuries from people wading into floodwater, debris that may be submerged that was not there previous to flooding can now injure those persons. You can have persons being electrocuted because of wires that are now in contact with the floodwater, as well as falling objects, landslides, and so on, can cause physical damage. From another perspective, would be that of diarrheal disease, vector-borne disease, and rodent-borne disease. As you know, floodwater can contact and contaminate our drinking potable water, as well as things that we eat if our homes are flooded. And so if those things are not properly sanitized or protected, then if we ingest them and they're contaminated with floodwater, we can get sick. As during floods, commonly cesspits, privies, and so forth overflow, and that fecal matter will contaminate floodwaters. If that water comes into contact with our drinking water or water that we use for potable purposes, then we can ingest bacteria that may be harmful. Things such as cholera, not present right now in Trinidad, but other diseases, salmonella, E. coli, can all cause diarrheal disease.
Yeah.
Additional to that, rats and other animals that urinate in that water that we are, within and in sharing that environment can carry dangerous vector-borne and rodent-borne diseases such as leptospira. And so
Yeah.
we are very, very, very cognizant of that fact. And all our health centers are currently on alert, looking for cases and people who are reporting to health centers with signs of such disease.
Yeah, and we would have
Water,
seen the release,
obviously,
Dr. Rahman, we would have seen the release, of course, from the Ministry of Health, who were cautioning people against leptospirosis. But let's switch gears now to the contamination of food, because remember, a lot of the crops would have been, waterlogged and that sort of thing. So can you speak some more to that as well, how it can contaminate, crops and products that grow in the ground?
right. So, as we always say, when in doubt, throw it out. So, one of the things that happens during flooding, you have vegetables, particularly leafy vegetables, those that are growing on soil, will be contaminated by floodwater. Some of those can be washed, others can't. So, for example, things that you use in salads like lettuce and so forth, those cannot be appropriately sanitized and therefore should not, if they are contaminated with flood water, should not be consumed. If you are unsure about your source of those things, then you should not purchase it during the period of floods. Knowing, however, that things that are grown in other medium like hydroponics and so forth will be safe. Those that are, away from floodwaters. Some vegetables and so forth can be sanitized. We advise that you mix bleach in water, regular household bleach that is not dyed or non-scented, and you add that to water to use as a sanitizer. 1 part to 10 parts of water can be used to clean within your home and places that have been soiled and contaminated by flood water. And also, you can make drinking water portable by adding an appropriate amount, depending. We usually add 1 tablespoon of water to 5 gallons of water, 1 tablespoon, sorry, of bleach to 5 gallons of water, and that can make it portable for use. So that is something that you can do, and you can clean certain vegetables. We, however, ask that those vegetables be ones that you can peel and remove the
Yeah.
outer skin.
Now, while we are advising people not to go into the water, there are the instances where the water comes to the homes. And so in a case like that, is it also as simple as just mixing the bleach with the water, or should you take additional sort of sanitization methods to ensure that your compound is clean?
So you need to mix bleach with water 1 to 10. So 1 cup of bleach to 10 cups of water if you're using it to sanitize your home environment. It is important that persons wear personal protective gear so that their skin and mucous membranes do not come in contact with flood or debris that may be contaminated. And then you wash properly, removing all wet objects that have been contaminated. It's important that during floods, your refrigerator and so on may not be working. Those foods that have thawed and are now unsafe should be thrown out as well as any things that have been contaminated directly with flood water. Canned foods and so on, the labels can be removed and they can be sanitized. But other food materials, whether they be in sealed packages or not, once they have come into contact with flood water, those should be discarded. Remember, when in doubt, throw it out.
Throw it out. And while we are talking about, the health effects to the person, I mean, generally, what is like a public health effect for this flooding of water? So, for example, will we be seeing tons of people who are getting sick, tons of people going into the health centers and the hospital to get that sort of service when they contract these diseases?
Well, it really depends on exposure. We don't see tons of people coming down with leptospirosis, despite the fact that we have flooding every year. But we do have cases, and leptospirosis will show up with individuals having fever, malaise, abdominal pain, reddened eyes, and so forth in the early stages. Those individuals may not think that they have a severe infection, but when their kidneys or if they get meningitis or their liver function is compromised and they're jaundiced and very ill, that is when they may choose to seek medical attention. So we are advising that anyone who is showing up with signs of sickness and have been exposed to floods and flood water to seek medical attention, because many of these diseases, particularly things like leptospirosis, although they can be fatal, they are easily treatable with antibiotics.
Yeah.
So it is important that you seek medical attention if you are ill.
Yeah. And finally, Dr. Rahman, anything else you want the public to know about this, the health effects of flooding, of, venturing into the water, just basically what we've been discussing for about the past 8 to 10 minutes?
Well, there's a lot of information. I advise that you look at the ministry's website. It will give you hints and tips on how to clean your home, your environment, how to keep yourself safe. Remember also, there are a lot of people, if you require any sort of assistance from the ministry, we are there at the health centers and at the RHAs to help. Many people are also going through mental health problems because of the apprehension, the problems that they're having facing this perennial flooding time and time again. So we hope that we can serve you. And if you have any questions, please contact your health center. Many of the problems that you see can be averted. And remember to clean up after flooding to prevent mosquitoes and mosquito-borne diseases that will also be deleterious to your health.
Well, Dr. Rahman, let me thank you so much for joining us on the Now Morning Show. I hope that people do take your advice and they do go to the ministry's website to get that very, very crucial information. Thank you so much for joining us.
I thank you for having me. And again, there's a lot of information outside. Thanks so much.